Welcome back to Market on Close. I'm Nicole Petalides. We're going to head right over to the CME. Scott Bauer is going to be joining us here to take a look at some of the key things that have been on the move, including Bitcoin under pressure again. I think Ben Lichtenstein said it's the third down day in 16, which I think is interesting, but it's back near that 8,000 mark.
Yeah, I think I hear Oliver Rennick calling in from somewhere also, tooting his call here. I think he's listening in. But no, in all seriousness, major sell-off. This is down 18% in about 7 days. And, there's a few theories, and I'm going to call them theories, Nicole, not actual reasons why we saw this massive sell-off. Number one is, it really traded sideways for the better part of a month prior to this big move. And in the past, when we've seen Bitcoin trade in a very narrow range for a number of weeks, maybe an extended period of time, that typically has led to a downward big breakdown, which is what we saw here. In addition to that, though, earlier in the week, we saw a big liquidation on the BitMEX exchange. I think that was late Monday night or Tuesday morning. A big liquidation, about $600 million worth of Bitcoin liquidated out of BitMEX. And then at the same time, the launch of the BACT, that's the BAKKT exchange, trying to get Bitcoin launched there, and some theory behind that was that they were actually trying to lower the price to attract people in there. And, I don't know how much truth is behind that, but you had all of this negativity all at once flowing into the market.
That's really interesting. First of all, do we know who sold or any part of who sold in that big chunk that you mentioned?
No, not that I've seen, but just that it was not one person, so it was not labeled as, let's call, a whale trade, right? But $600 million worth, and that happened in a very short time. We're talking about, in like an hour, and that was really the accelerator behind
I wonder
the big,
if that was like
institutions.
I wonder if it was institutions or a country, or and then you talk about the other part of it, which they're trying to make it attractive for investors. What I think is also very interesting, as you were noting, that it was in somewhat of a range and had been sitting around 10,000, I guess, for a while. There were a lot of calls for a big up move. I started to hear more people being optimistic and saying, hey, $3,000 to the upside near term. I was not really hearing people saying, watch out below. Were you surprised by the move?
They're actually, from the technical standpoint, and it's so hard to look at Bitcoin technicals because it's still so new. But from the technical standpoint, there were some lower lows, lower highs. So, there was some bearishness out there. Now, I will say, however, again, from the technical side, the fact that it didn't really break 8,000, which is more psychological than anything else. But the real number is about 7,600. That is where there's a big line in the sand, some really big technical support. So, from what I've been reading and gathering is at least the Bitcoin bulls out there are hanging their hat on that it's held those levels here. And if it can continue to hold, they might be looking for a big breakout back to the upside.
Okay, so we'll watch for that. What are your thoughts on currencies as we talk about the strength of the U.S. dollar that we've been seeing? How did the dollar fare today?
It showed that it is a little bit vulnerable. And I say a little bit because it's really been, as rock steady as any currency in the world over the last 6 to 9 months or so. But it showed a little vulnerability when we saw the news come out yesterday about, possible impeachment proceedings, this, that, and the other. And the dollar actually, fell below 98 for the first time in a while. But then as news came out today and as we got, the complacency kind of came out and things maybe aren't going to be so bad as people are expected, the dollar rallied right back and closed on its highs that we've seen in almost 2 weeks.
Right, and I see it's up over 5% year over year, and we still are watching the Brexit story and things like that, right?
No doubt about it, and that also is giving a lot of tailwinds to the dollar here. I mean, you look at how the dollar fared against the pound. It was up about 1% today. It was up 0.5% versus the euro. Even against the yen, which obviously is the big safe haven trade, the dollar rallied about 0.5% today.
All right, you want to move on to oil? So I saw oil come back a little bit, right? We had API yesterday. We had the other report today at 10:30. What are your thoughts on what we've been seeing? Obviously, we had the Saudi attack last week, but I don't know. We're still in this range.
You know what? We certainly tested both ends of that range. You know, the downside just a few weeks ago, and then obviously on the big spike up last week after the Saudi attacks, we tested that upside, and we're sitting smack dab in the middle right now. But I have to tell you that barring any sort of geopolitical event, there's a lot of pressure here. You know, we're continuing to see these builds, these unexpected builds. You mentioned the API, the EIA came out this morning, and you know, you look at still the global growth issue and the demand issue here, and I don't see how anything is going to propel this back to the spike that we saw last week near 60 on West Texas, barring again any sort of geopolitical event.
Yeah, and you know, when we think about oil and all the commodities for that matter, I mean, gold came down as well. Did you have a gold thought?
Yep. No, other than that, again, the market in general does not like uncertainty, right? So anytime there's uncertainty, you get those safe haven trades. And, you know, the uncertainty yesterday, if we want to break it down to a micro, you know, day-by-day basis, was what's going to go on with his impeachment. And then once the news came out this morning, it was like, oh, okay, all is well. So, you know, the gold trade really, you know, was very bearish yesterday and leading into today, and that's why we saw gold down so much today, because the news was out. The uncertainty over what was Nancy Pelosi going to say was gone.
Yeah, and the Department of Justice, you know, after reviewing the transcript, basically said, you know, there was no violation of the law. So that's where we stand right now, but we're only stating the facts of what are coming out and how it affects the market. And I think that we're going to be talking about a lot of this over time if, you know, if it all continues. Great chat. I appreciate it, Scott.
Yep.
It's nice to see you. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Scott Bauer there from the CME.